The MK party announced that it will ask the Constitutional Court for an urgent interdict to prevent Parliament from proceeding with the swearing in of the MPs and the election of the President. This comes after concerns over the May elections, citing potential election fraud and rigging. Let's now explore the legal implications of this action and also the constitutional challenges involved in what it means for the integrity of South Africa's electoral process with Associate Professor in Public Law at the University of Cape Town, Professor Cathy Powell. But also very important to the legal matters is what it means politically. We speak to political analyst Dr. Levy, Ndou, who's joining us this morning as well. Thank you both for making time for us. Professor Powell, let's start off with you. So the MK party now saying that they will interdict the sitting from going ahead. It's a question that we've explored before on the show. But what do you think the judiciary stance would be on a constitutionally mandated process that says that 14 days after the declaration of the results, there must be a sit-in within 14 days of the National Assembly? Is it possible for a court to say that, we do understand the process that you need to follow, which is constitutionally mandated. However, there are concerns that have been raised. And also on top of that, the MK party is yet to file papers in the Electoral Court with regards to the challenges that they've alleged.
Morning, Aldrin. I think you have named all the major obstacles that the MK faces. It has not actually followed the procedure that the Electoral Act sets out for if it has a problem with any specific result. That was needed within 2 days. It didn't do it. It hasn't provided any of the evidence. So that's the first problem. Secondly, the Constitution itself requires that the first sitting of Parliament be within 14 days of the election. That would be this coming Sunday, if not this coming Friday. So you would need a very, very good reason for the Constitutional Court to even entertain both ignoring the actual legislative process for contesting an election result and to ignore the Constitution itself. So I think much as one shouldn't forecast, I think it is likely that the Constitutional Court will not even admit the interdict application onto the roll. It won't even hear the matter.
Sure. And Dr. Ndou, this is where we bring you into this conversation, because then speaking politically, again, it would be a showdown between the MK party, by extension Jacob Zuma, and the Constitutional Court yet again.
Good morning, Aldrin. Good morning to the viewers. Morning, Professor Powell. Indeed, but I think there are factors that we need to look at. The first factor being that the MK party does not have established structures to function as a fully fledged political party. They've got interim structures, and it appears as if decisions are actually taken by few selected individuals, which therefore requires the entire population of the party having to take instructions from somewhere. But apart from that, you have got a situation where the MK party has been voted into parliament by a good number of citizens, and they would love to see these people going to parliament and represent them. And of course, my view is that if you have got this party not going to parliament anymore or boycotting the parliamentary processes, they could be disappointing those people who voted them into power. Another factor would be that the MK party still has its own challenges within the party that relates to leadership of the party. And you would know the relationship between Jacob Zuma and Mr. Khumalo, who is, and the matter is still at the courts. But another factor that would create a very bad perception about the party and its leader would be this element of defiance and not wanting to respect the rules that we have in the country. The process of having the first sitting of parliament it does not just happen. It starts from campaigns. There should be elections, the declaration of elections, and then you have the first sitting of parliament. And if you have got such elements coming from the MK party, the perception that they create will be that they don't want to be players who play by the rules, and they always want to find ways and means to bend the rules. What would be the outcome of all this politically? We just have to wait and see as to how other political parties and ordinary citizens, including members of the MK party, are going to respond to this kind of behavior.
Yeah. You mentioned the issue around the structures, and I'm going to come now to you, Professor Powell, because initially when I interviewed the Mkhonto we Sizwe political party spokesperson, he did mention that the party is looking into boycotting the sitting of the National Assembly, and therefore there won't be a quorum that is there won't be a quorum, and therefore the National Assembly wouldn't be able to sit. This is a similar argument that they are making now as well. But then later on, in an interview with the SABC, he said that actually the political party members will go, the 58 members will go to Parliament for the swearing-in ceremony. Then yesterday, the news broke that actually they will not be going anymore because of the reasons that have been stipulated before. So comes in the conversation and the debate around what does the Constitution of the National Assembly mean in terms of Section 46 of the Constitution, and what does a quorum mean in terms of Section 53, subsection 1b of the Constitution?
Thank you. And it's an important question. 46 is about the composition of the National Assembly. It's about how many seats there should be in the National Assembly. When the Constitution was first drawn up, the parties couldn't agree, the negotiating parties couldn't agree on the size of the National Assembly. So they said it has to be there have to be between 350 and 400 seats. The Electoral Act latest settled that at 400 seats. So that's the composition, that's how many seats we have. The question of quorum is covered, as you said, in Section 53, and that's how many of the seats need to be filled before the National Assembly can make a decision. And the decision that has to be made on Friday, which is electing the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and President, for that you need only a third of the seats to be filled. So we're looking at about 134 seats. So the absence of the 59, I think, members of the MK is not going to make the slightest bit of difference in a 400-seat parliament.
Yep. So this is what they said in that letter, Professor Powell, before we go to Dr. Ndou. They say that this will mean that the National Assembly will not have the requisite minimum number of 350 sworn-in members to constitute it a question which is totally different from the quorum required for a properly constituted National Assembly. So, which brings back that question again, when do we say that 400 members of the National Assembly have been elected?
400 members have already been elected. They haven't been sworn in, but they've been elected. The MK is insisting on confusing composition with quorum. They're two completely separate issues in two completely separate sections. And the argument is legally so untenable that I find it hard to believe they're actually making it in good faith. I can't believe that they don't have a legal advisor who knows the difference between quorum and composition. So we've had 400 seats worth elected. Those 400 people don't have to all be in Parliament for Parliament to make its decisions. I suppose at this stage it's worth pointing out, especially as the MK can't decide whether it's coming to Parliament or not, that if it does miss more than 15 days worth of work without excuse, it can lose its seats. Yep. So that is a separate issue. But for now, we have 400 people that would be provided by the various party lists, and the work of Parliament can go ahead, provided they have a quorum. And that's a majority of seats have to be filled for passing legislation, and a third of the seats have to be filled for all other decisions.
Okay. Dr. Ndou, you touched a bit on this, but I want to bring in the other aspect, and that is the former president speaking at an event or a funeral over the weekend, former President Jacob Zuma saying that there will be another election. So almost throwing in the idea of a snap poll. Do you think that it is possible, politically speaking, again?
Well, I think it depends on the negotiations that are going on right now. The fact that we do not have the party that got a 50+1 requires that the different political parties have to come together, discuss a coalition or have an agreement on the government of national unity. And if they cannot agree and not be able to elect the president, then we can talk about the other elections. If there are very good reasons that could be accepted by the Concord, which I also doubt it could happen, then we could also then have another elections. Unless there is something else which is outside the normal political and legal framework that might happen, then maybe they've got something in place for us that would force us to go to the next elections. But as things stands now, we appear to be still very safe, but anxiety, I know, is going to punish us because we're still waiting on the outcomes of the negotiations that are taking place amongst the different political parties. And I think the wish of those who want the fresh elections would be that these negotiations will not proceed, so that indeed we can move towards fresh elections.
Professor Powell, let's revisit that conversation once again. What happens if, as Dr. Ndou has just indicated, negotiations are still underway, if there is no agreement in place and the National Assembly sits and there is no president who is elected, and probably via the limitation process there would be a president that is eliminated, that is elected. But if it doesn't happen, what would the next process be?
Well, there actually, legally speaking, can't be another election for 3 years. The Parliament can only hold another election if it votes, so the members of the National Assembly vote to dissolve. And that can usher in fresh elections, but only if it's 3 years since the last ones. So we're kind of stuck with the parliament that we've got right now, no matter what noises Jacob Zuma might make in speeches. As you pointed out, a president can still be chosen, even if that person doesn't have majority support, because the system that's set up is that you have nominations, you have votes, and if none of the nominated potential candidates win a majority of the votes, then you remove the person who got the lowest number of votes and you vote again. And you keep going until somebody gets the most votes of those who voted. There is, in theory, the possibility that everybody just refuses to vote. But remember, it's only the MK that wants to behave unconstitutionally at the moment. And while they've got 15% of the seats, that's not enough to cause the kind of disruption they want to cause in Parliament. So the noises that they're making at the moment seem to be aimed more at people outside Parliament than people in Parliament. They can't actually mess up the process the way they want to, because the rules provide for the election of, in effect, a minority president. That president would have a little bit of trouble running the country, but would have the power to appoint a cabinet, and that cabinet would be meant to take over the executive function of running the country. They would then struggle to pass laws because they're not guaranteed majority support on any of the bills that they bring to Parliament. So look, we're looking at a rocky 4 years, but we're not looking at fresh elections yet.
Thank you so much for your time. Professor Cathy Powell, their constitutional law expert, as well as Dr. Levy Ndou. Really appreciate your time.